Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's. Well, on Newsmakers, guess what? It's the big stories of the past year, and then our popular financial literacy update, Pennsylvania politics and government, in depth and in detail. And guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to do the big stories of the year in Pennsylvania with John Micek from the Allentown Morning Call and Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock newspapers. These guys have been covering the big stories. Hold it, you guys, not just this year, but for a long time, right? You've been doing this, both of you.
Yes.
They call you veteran reporters. All right, we're going to start with you, Robert Swift. All right, big story, would you agree, yes or no? One of the big stories, the failure of the legislature to do Marcellus Shale.
Right, it's just another year where this thing started in, people forget, in early 2009. The first proposal from Governor Rendell. Now we're coming up on 3 years. There's been no agreement yet on how to levy a fee or tax on industry, plus put these stricter environmental regulations, doing water issues and make them into law. The industry has, continued to, new drilling permits and new wells being drilled, new jobs being created, and this debate is now starting to enter its third year.
All right, John, on this issue, they still can't decide if they have a fee, who should impose it? Should it be state imposed? Should it be county imposed? How big an issue is that?
Yeah, I mean, the legislature broke for the year
the
other week without reaching agreement on any of this. The bill is sitting in a joint House and Senate conference committee now to presumably some of those differences be ironed out over the Christmas holiday. The big question is this: whether the fee should be imposed at the statewide level,
right,
as the Senate wants, or at the county level. So you have this patchwork of fees by county. The county would have an option to impose it or not, which is sought by the House and sought by the Corbett administration. That's one of the big discussions here. The level of the fee is another discussion. The distribution of it, as already alluded to. I mean, what's been interesting for me has been sort of the policy maturation of the Corbett administration on this. If you recall, Terry, back in 2010, when he was running for governor, Governor Corbett said, no way, no how, no fees, no taxes,
right,
no nothing. We're now here a year later plus, and he's not, now has not only accepted the idea of an impact fee, but is talking about the policy mechanisms to implement it. I mean, there's still an entire discussion going on about whether or not the state should have a severance tax, but we can get to that.
All right, before we get to the next issue, look, crystal ball it. Can they get this done?
I always thought that this was an issue to be done with the budget, which is done in June, because there's a fiscal implication.
Absolutely.
I never thought it was going to be done in December anyway, so that's probably the next target date.
All right, we're gonna have to run to a break, but let's start the new ones. Issue number 2, school choice. Where does that stand?
Add that to the list of stuff that went undone at the end of the year. Governor Corbett was seeking some changes to charter schools, to the Earned Income Education Improvement Tax Credit for Business, plus public school vouchers. Talks broke down on that. That's punted to next year as well.
All right, we're going to run to a break, but there is a proposal of a scaled-down version of this that I want to get into after this break. All right, school choice, the second big issue. What's the third? You're going to have to stay there to find out.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by ReconnectPA.org, supporting a comprehensive transportation funding solution, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back to the program. We're doing the big stories of the year with two of the state's leading journalists, John Micek and Robert Swift. All right, Robert. Now, as John points out, they haven't been able to get it done, but now they have a really scaled-down version of this that maybe will find its way through. What's that version?
It's basically trying to expand an existing program that lets businesses give scholarships to help kids go to the school of their choice. And then another one would be just to give like a pilot program in the poorest districts. There's always been more Senate for school choice in the Senate than in the House.
Right.
And one reason is that senators have more diverse types of school districts in their district, so they're more inclined to,
Right.
hey, let people give them a bunch of options. In the House, the districts are more homogeneous, and a lot of House members don't see where the benefit of the school choice things would work for them.
All right, you get to do the crystal ball here. Pass something? I mean, if you had to put a percentage, 40%, 50%, what do you think?
No, probably.
No,
On
okay.
vouchers. I mean, this is
You're shaking your head.
50-50.
I mean, this stymied Tom Ridge. He didn't get it. The EITC expansion's a no-brainer.
That's a
That's
scholarship.
that's a tax
Businesses can
credit.
contribute to
They
a
can do that.
scholarship. They
can
already have that.
They already
just
have
don't
that, so the
expand it.
expansion of that's a no-brainer. They can probably do some charter school fixes, but I'm still thinking that vouchers might be too hard a row to hoe for them.
All right, issue number 3, and I mean it is a huge national story. Both of you have been all over this story, congressional redistricting. Wow, Robert. I mean,
Yeah.
gerrymander, gerrymander, gerrymander. Go ahead.
And one of the things, it's obviously done to create, 12 Republican districts.
Talking about, hold on,
you know.
Robert, just to set it up. We're
Yeah.
talking about Congress. We have 19 congressional districts. We're going to go to 7 because of population shifts. Tell us what the legislature did.
They basically created, 18 districts, 12 are Republican. They
Six,
combined 2, and they moved a lot of districts to the west, a lot of weird shapes. Classic one is the 7th district. One of the things that they've done is they decapitated a lot of cities from the rest of the counties they serve because they were trying to get Democratic populations, grouping them together and these are cities of, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Easton, Reading, Harrisburg, most glaringly.
So your point is that they're all now in heavily rural districts, and there's a city represented by rural. Is that correct?
Yeah,
By
yeah.
Yeah, legislator, lots of rural. Go ahead.
That happened in our
Pick
neck
it
of the
up,
woods.
John.
I worked for the Morning Call. So in the Lehigh Valley, the city of Easton, after being part of the 15th congressional district for 40-something years, got sliced out and put into a newly redrawn 17th district seat for Democrat Tim Holden so he could hit his population targets there. There's been a huge outcry in the region about this because for the longest time the valley's been identified by its 3 major cities, Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton. And there's taken a real blow to regional identity that's been sort of sacrificed on the altar of political expediency.
And you see the same thing up at Scranton Times and several other
These are,
newspapers. Go
these
ahead.
are the seats of U.S. district courts. These are courthouse towns.
Right.
And Wilkes-Barre's, separated from the rest of Luzerne County. Another thing that's going, some of these, this is a legislation, it's passed by both chambers. The governor is in his hands, assigned, but it can face court challenges. A federal court, with the Harrisburg situation, you could have a minority voting rights.
Okay, when we come back, guess what? The big story of the year. What is it? They're going to tell us after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, well, whatever that was, welcome back to the program. Never mind, the host is a little tongue-tied here as we move ahead. All right, John, who gets to start this? I forget.
I do.
Robert
RB's
Swift
honors.
gets to start. The big story of the year is, Robert?
Well, basically, the state's fiscal condition continues to be very uncertain. The idea of a budget is a spending plan, but because for the last 3 years, the plan's been more out of whack than ever, and the Corbett administration, after having it done on time, and
Got a
making
budget on time.
deep cuts to public education,
Cuts to
to a
public
lot of
education.
programs gone, missing, eliminated. Now we're projecting $500 million revenue shortfall, and more increased costs. They have back into the old budget freeze again. So
all right, so story number 1 is the fact that Tom Corbett facing huge budget challenges. John Micek got the budget done. Finish it.
On time, first 28 years, like
On
20
time.
minutes before the deadline. I mean, this goes.
And I know both of you remember this, right? Both of you are
I
going to
had
write
my
about
first
that.
4th of July off in 8 years.
There you go.
But I mean, this goes to the fact that you can do everything right and still be a victim to external economic forces.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's really what this is about. The national economy is still sputtering. The state unemployment rate, while better than the national rate, is still fluctuating. Regulations are off. So you can cut spending, you can try to hold things together, but still, budgets are still subject to the whims of external economic forces.
So here we go. Budget done on time. No tax or fee hike in that budget, correct?
No, and they're rolling it out, or at least the corporate people are saying none for next year.
And none for next year. And John Micek, 3% less spending in the current budget than last year, correct?
Exactly right.
Less spending.
Less spending, 3% less spending, maybe more next year, who knows?
All right, so that's the big story of the year. Now, as we look ahead with this, Robert, budget, cuts again?
Cuts again, because they don't want to, they're going to have to, either cuts or try to wring out more, quote, efficiencies. But, you know, what's left, what can be done with that? They've been cutting now for 3 years. So the easy stuff has been done, as Secretary Zogby said this week.
And the big dog whistle here is possibly cuts to the Pennsylvania State Police, a 4% cut to the force,
Okay,
400 or 500 officers.
If I have you guys back next year, the big story of the year next year, well, what could, you know, might be the budget again. Would both of you agree? Good. All right, there you have it. All right, our popular financial literacy update is next. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program where we're doing our popular financial literacy update with Mike Wishnow, a senior VP at the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, a frequent guest, and Kent Hartzler. He's president and CEO of Everance Federal Credit Union. I have to be nice to him. He's in Lancaster County, where I live. I want to get that out right away, guys. All right, Michael, it's been a kind of a wild and crazy year. You're not a wild and crazy guy, but it's a wild and crazy year. With all of the changes that have taken place, we began the year with consumers a little reluctant to spend, credit card spending not very good. How did we end the year, by the way?
Well, certainly consumer confidence is up, Terry. Consumers are spending this holiday season a little bit more than they were last holiday season. Consumer debt is down. So I think that there's some additional confidence in the marketplace. And I think that consumers overall are looking more positive as we sit here today than we were a year ago. Would you agree with that,
when
Ken?
you see, in your shop, is there more borrowing now, do you find? Are people a little more saying, okay, go ahead?
Yeah, I think there's probably less borrowing. There's a flood of deposits coming out of the market into insured deposits into the credit union, so we have a lot of money to loan, and the loan demand has quite frankly been a bit soft.
Is that because you think, either one of you, because people are nervous about the gyrations in the market, so they're not investing, they're just saying...
I think that's part of it, and I think people are paying down debt. Would you agree?
Right. There's a concept of deleveraging where people aren't incented to save money, so they might as well pay down their debts early and accelerate.
But that may not overall, I mean, that may be one of the reasons the economy, though it's doing a little better, is not expanding quickly enough because, and Michael, you and I have chatted about that over the since the recession began, that people just might not be spending because they're concerned about the future. I mean, personally, I'm not some money in the market, you know, as a lot of middle-class folks do. I'm a little nervous about it. I mean, do you find a lot of your customers same way? They talk about that when they come in?
They do. A lot of people are hunkering down. They're kind of taking a wait-and-see attitude and being a bit conservative, particularly the small businesses that we serve. They might be waiting on a project or delaying a strategy for a period of time just to see how 2012 shapes up.
Yeah, and your prospect, I want to get into another subject here about, you know, your company's financial products and services, which is pretty unique. But before I do that, prospects for the new year?
Well, I think for credit unions, as we look back, it was a pretty good year. There were a lot of financial and economic challenges, particularly early on, but credit unions have done really well. Bank of America helped us quite a bit by announcing a $5 fee and consumers taking a new look at credit unions. We
Then
had
they backed
terrific-
down on that, or are they still
They
doing
did.
it?
They did back
But
down
but
on
you
it, but
think
it had an impact of
adverse effect. on
Yeah,
it, right?
waking people up and having them look around. I don't know. Are your membership numbers up, Kent?
They are, and I think this is a tremendous opportunity for credit unions. There's a lot of need, there's frustration in the general populace that we see, and I think people are ready for a place where they can trust and do business.
Yeah. How about the, what's your general sense about the mortgage situation? And I noticed in some counties now, we're beginning, in Pennsylvania, beginning to see some breakout. Not huge, but more mortgages, more people looking at homes. Is that what you see?
Rates continue to be at a historic low, but the housing inventory is strong, so there's a lot of inventory to move.
So you all think this could be a pretty good year, a better year, Michael, for home mortgages?
Yeah, the jury's still out on that, quite frankly, Terry. I mean, because you also have foreclosures that are on the rise, and you have some negative information in the
But
housing
we were not,
market as
in
well.
Pennsylvania as a whole, we were not like Florida or Nevada or some other places where they greatly overbuilt.
Right.
You know, gave mortgages to just about anyone who could sign their name on a paper.
Right.
So generally, would you say we're healthier?
The Commonwealth has definitely been insulated from a lot of that, but there are pockets, and even in the state here, that have experienced some
Are you
market
finding
increases.
a lot of? I'm going through the review of the year before we get to the one of the big topics we want to deal with. But overall, a lot of refinancing in the field, refinancing at these historic
you
rates.
probably see more of that than I do.
Yeah, a lot of refinancing, but credit standards have tightened up as well.
Yeah.
So those that can refinance likely already have, but people are refinancing because rates continue to go
Well, I
down.
refinanced, and I want to tell you, I had more paperwork and
Right.
more scrutiny
Oh, yeah.
done to the refinancing than I did in any home that I bought in my lifetime. So that's a reaction to, obviously, the looseness of the credit that we saw earlier, right?
In part, it also is thanks to Dodd-Frank, which was the new Wall Street bill that was passed by the Congress that now puts a lot more burden on
burdens
lenders.
and restrictions.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
in
going to
other-
continue to happen, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and it may be making it more difficult than it should be for people to get homes, demanding, higher down payments, I guess, looking at credit scores and all of those things. All right, I want to talk a little bit, Ken, about the kind of unique financial services that you supply to Anabaptist Mennonites and others. How are their banking needs different than Michael Wishnow's banking needs?
Well,
Let's do it
absolutely.
that
There's
way.
a lot of similarities, but there's some differences. The credit union philosophy, the not-for-profit, the membership-owned philosophy is very compatible to the way the Amish and Mennonite and the Anabaptist communities have lived. And some of the concepts of mutuality and community, it just hand in glove fits really well with the credit union philosophy. And so we have an opportunity to serve this group of people around the country.
Well, it's just not in, you normally associate parts of Pennsylvania, like Lancaster County, for example, where I live, lots of Mennonites, and my wife, by the way, is Mennonite. But we have them up around, in State College and Little West, and then big community in Ohio and Indiana.
Right.
You're serving all of those communities?
We have members in 49 states
Oh my
and 17 countries around the world. And so, we're widespread. Of course, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Ohio,
Yeah.
some of those states that you mentioned are large concentrations of our...
So what percentages of that would you say of the, plain community, probably not a good description, Anabaptists and Mennonites, Amish, Dunkers.
Right.
What percentage of your business
It's a
is that?
wide, diverse continuum that we serve. I would say 15 or 20% of our members would fit that group that tend not to use technology, that tend to be adverse to those kind of modern financial services. But the vast majority of our membership is mainstream and progressive and expect that we provide them with technology.
Yeah, you do something called a youth covenant savings.
Yeah.
That's a youth covenant savings. I've never heard that expression or that term before.
You know, it's interesting. That product came out of the idea that a lot of adults, if they have an employer that has a matching pension plan, that we ought to create something for young people. So what we've done is we've asked them to covenant with a mentor or an adult, a parent or grandparent, to provide a matching incentive for a young person to save, and then we would pay a premium interest rate on that account.
Yeah, I have to think about that. I mean, we do the bonds, you know, for the kids and the grandkids. We always just say, well, we'll do a bond and we'll keep, hopefully, you know, over time. I'm not putting money in the market for, you know. I can't figure it out myself, so I'm not going to have anyone, you know. But
it's a little hard to get excited about the little amount of interest that you get paid on a deposit account these days. So we thought maybe the matching account or the pension idea would add a little bit more incentive.
That's kind. And you go ahead.
Yeah, and what's neat, Terry, is as we go through the products that Everance offers, it's such a great exhibit of how business philosophy and faith and the Anabaptist philosophy can go together and make a lot of business sense and help a lot of people at the same time.
It's really about helping people integrate their faith, their values, their beliefs in their everyday financial decisions, and that's really the essence of what Everance attempts to do.
Yeah. Well, one other aspect of this I noticed is that when there are lots of folks, not just in the faith community, do missions, a lot more probably, and you have sort of a rebate program for missions. Yeah. How's that work?
We issue a Visa credit card, and as all of us are well aware, there's plenty of different types of credit cards that you can get, ones that do air miles or rebates or gas. And so what we do, we have a rebate for mission card. As our members use it, the credit union earns interchange income, and we turn around and support some of our local and national mission and relief agencies with that program, and it's been very popular.
Yeah, so you return some of the money you make to the mission or the church that's doing the mission and the mission?
That's correct.
That's a pretty, I'm learning something here. This is a whole, we didn't talk about this before, did we? I didn't think so. We've been doing, how long, Michael?
About 8 years.
More years, 8 years. I can't remember all the programs that we did. Then the final thing I want to talk about is sort of hybrid. You're into the environmental movement, you know, with hybrids and going green, and how does that work?
Well, stewardship is a big value for Everance as well. The idea that taking care of the creation, of stewarding our resources well. So we have a couple products, the hybrid car discount being one. If a member buys a fuel-efficient vehicle, we'll give them a discount and an incentive to do that.
And going green?
Going green, same thing, home equity. If you're doing a home improvement and a percentage of that portion is for green purposes, another discount on the rate.
All right, Michael, I'm going to give you the last word. We're looking ahead for next year. Give us your best overall estimate in 30 seconds.
Well, I think next year will very much mirror this past year. People will remain conservative. Interest rates will remain low.
Okay.
Return on investment will, unfortunately, remain low as well. So it's going to be a borrower's market.
I was going to say, good time to buy a home. If you know, obviously, if you can get a mortgage, good time to buy a car, good time to make some of those big fundamental investments, college education. You agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for being, as always, on the program. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and stay well.